everybody, for February 13th study session. Appreciate everybody being here. It's a beautiful morning in Mesa. And with that, all members of our council is present, and we're going to try and get Council Member Adams on. If he does, he'll be joining us by Zoom. So our first item is item 1A, a presentation on options for the recruitment and hiring process for the next city manager.
So Mayor, Council, thank you. Terry and Tina, let's join us up here. So as you asked us to come back with some options a couple of weeks ago on the recruitment of city manager. So we'd like to provide those to you this morning. And I'll just start off. Thank you. Thanks, Terry. With just a kind of an overview of kind of the experience at the City of Mesa and how different types of recruitments we've used for our high-level executives. And I'll start off with, there's really kind of three different approaches, if you would, categories of how we've done that. The first has been national executive recruitments. And when I was recruited as the city manager for Mesa over 19 years ago, that is the method that was used back then. There was a consultant that was hired by the city who did a national search, and when I became aware of the position, that was the individual that I corresponded with, that I was sending resumes to, who was calling me to letting me know about the position, and did the initial screening interview was with the consultant, and that consultant led the recruitment all the way to the point where there were, I think they narrowed it down to maybe 5 or 6 applicants at the time, and then brought those back to the city. But the recruiter was throughout the whole process with this council, helping them to go through the process. And the advantage there was, because it was a national recruitment, and I think except there might have been one internal applicant, all of the rest of the applicants were from outside the city. And so the recruiter was familiar, at least had contact and knew about each of the applicants, and was able to provide that background and information to the council. So we've also used that. I've used that a few times. As you can see, with a couple of these other positions, we've done national recruitments for police chief on a couple of occasions, and that's allowed us to look throughout the country for opportunities to hire police chief, and we've done that, as I mentioned a couple of times. We're also conducted a national recruitment for our chief information officer, and we are currently in progress today, underway with recruitment for best replacement for city engineer. So again, we hire consultants. They do a lot of the outreach. They do the initial screening. They bring those positions back, and Terry will talk more about their role and what they do. As far as the next level, so that's a national level, we hire a recruiter, and Terry will talk about the kind of the timeline that takes. Then the next level is maybe not quite as extensive, but we use the good folks here at Human Resources who do recruitments for the city. And while they're kind of doing the same thing as a recruiter, I mean, they are doing very much the same things as a recruiter within their context of their resources. We've used, our HR department has done the executive recruitment for a few positions, such as both city clerk, most recently, facilities management director, as well as our communications director. So they're doing many of the same things that a recruiter or outside consultant would do. They're placing the position on a job listing. They're answering questions of applicants. They are receiving all the applications. They go through a screening process. They will recommend and narrow that down to a dozen or so, and then working through the city manager's office, or in the case of city clerk, with the council, reducing and getting that number down to a number that the council or the city staff would interview. But they're there through the whole process, helping to manage the recruitment. And then finally, the last method that we've used in the past, again, both for police chief and fire chief, economic development director, and water resources director. What this has allowed us to do the internal recruitment is the distinction. For example, a couple of times since I've been here that we've done internal recruitments or appointments for example, as police chief, we had put in Johnny Mesa, if you remember Chief Mesa, who had been a longtime police officer and an interim. And when Frank Milstead took the job to be the DPS director for the state, we appointed Johnny Mesa to be our police chief. Felt like we had a strong candidate. He had been with the city for many years, had been doing a good job, and we didn't see the need really to go out and do an extensive recruitment, so we appointed the police chief. In the fire chief's example, we had a handful of really good applicants at the time. When Chief Harry Beck retired from the city, and so we went through a process of interviewing and meeting with all the internal candidates in that case, and making a selection just from the internal candidates. More recently, with Economic Development Director and the Water Resources Director, we felt like we had two very long-term assistant directors who knew the department, knew the city very well, had been performing in their capacities very well, and so we made the appointments directly to them. So now I'm going to ask Terry and Tina to kind of go through. That's just kind of giving you the the experience of the city and how we've used each one of these, and then maybe they'll kind of go into a little more detail about what's involved in each of these processes. So
Terry, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Adams is now on Zoom.
Okay.
So thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Terry.
Mayor Freeman, Council Member Terry Overby, and I have with me Tina Rogers, who is our HR Administrator, here to go into a little bit more detail on the options that Chris has just discussed: national executive recruitment, which is HR run, or an internal recruitment. A little bit more detail. The difference with the national executive recruitment is that is the use of a search firm. They source internal and external candidates, kind of thinking along the lines of a headhunter. They're actually doing a little bit more recruiting. They may be doing direct contact to individuals, the connections, like was mentioned. They have a network. Usually we pick a search firm that has experience running this type of recruitment, looking out there. Time frame can vary, 3 to 5 months. We just put an estimate. It really depends on how long you want this process to take, how long we want to post the recruitment to be advertised for, how quickly we want to move through, how many different panels, et cetera, can depend on the time, but we kind of gave a guideline of 3 to 5 months. It's advertised both locally, nationally. It's advertised in various publications, diverse publications. It's in city management publications, professional publications, et cetera. The consulting firm identifies and contacts potential candidates to apply for the position. They do the application review, pre-screening the interviews. The consulting firm conducts the pre-screening interviews to narrow it down, and then they generally provide the city with a client report of the candidates that have applied, and then that is what's used to narrow the list for the panel interviews. At that point, the interviews are conducted by a panel that's selected by council, and that can be various members, various management members, department members, whoever is chosen by council to serve on that panel. Could be various panels, because I think when Chris went through it, there were a couple different panels, community panels, departmental panels, et cetera, whatever is at the will of the council. And then the panel will recommend the top 2 to 3 candidates to the council. Council will interview and select the city manager. So that's a little bit more information on the external consulting firm. The human resource led is very similar in the sense of it is run by our HR department. It does source both external and internal candidates. Similar time frame, again, varies depending on how long we want to leave the recruitment open for. National advertising through local publications, professional publications. The applications are reviewed by HR. HR will select 10 to 12 of the most qualified candidates to present to council, and then narrow down for initial interviews. Again, the difference here is HR is not doing headhunting. HR is not reaching out to candidates and encouraging them to apply. We are advertising for that and then assisting with the process. And then interviews conducted by a panel, again, selected by council, and panel will recommend the top 2 to 3. And then council will do interviews and select the city manager. And then the third option is an internal recruitment, and that is the candidate pool is internal candidates. This can be, it's a more of a condensed time frame, 1 month time frame. We've done it in the form of interest memos to find out who is interested and qualified candidates to present to council, and council can interview and select a city manager from that pool.
All right, so Mayor and Council, that's our presentation. Those are, again, you could have hybrids of any of these. Sometimes the national recruiter will have a national recruiter and HR will do some part of that work. But it really kind of depends on where the council looks at this. Again, when I was recruited as the city manager, I don't know that there was really considered an internal candidate, a strong internal candidate with the city. There was an applicant, but he was part of the process, but didn't continue throughout the entire process. So I think there was a decision then that they kind of had a limited perspective of those, or limited pool of candidates internally, so they went out and looked nationally. Again, you see, as the city, we've used all 3 of these different approaches, and certainly we've used the internal recruitment most recently and you were familiar with some of these individuals, whether it's the police chief and whether it's economic development director, water resources, individuals who have been with the city for a long time, have been in the capacity as an executive in those areas that we've hired them. And I think we've been successful in that area also. So we're here to receive direction from the council, ask or answer any questions you might have, and help you in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brady and Terry. This is obviously a very important position to fill, city manager's position, and so I'll welcome comments from the council and see what direction you want to go. Who wants to lead out? Okay, thank you.
I would like to see an internal recruitment. I think it's a critical time in our city with the politics and changes and everything, to make sure that we have instilled confidence, continuity, stability in the leadership of our city, which has been so strong and highly recognized. We do have at least one very good internal candidate. And I think it's important someone who knows, given that we have a lot of changes right now and anticipate more from, what's going to happen in politics at the federal level, that someone who understands our city, our culture, our history, the people internally, externally, who Mesa is, and can lead those people and have the respect of the departments and instill the confidence to go forward, especially with our public safety, which is 2/3 of our budget. It might be 2/3. I don't know as far as number of employees. It's a critical part of what we do as a city is our public safety. And I know it is a number 1 priority for our residents, is that have a safe city, but that is also, we need it to work smoothly and without internal conflict, and especially with the state of everything right now in chaos, being a stable city that stands for the leadership that we've come to know and can continue that, and evolving it into, the newer ways of, what we have to do to transform and evolve as a city into the 22nd century, and evolving, but also providing that leadership and stability that I think is necessary. And like I said, I know we have at least one very good candidate, and I have a lot of confidence in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duff. Councilmember Heredia.
Yeah, I think I agree with Councilmember Duff. I think I've been a part of some of the recruitment efforts in other capacities that I serve, specifically on the national executive recruitment search, what I've seen is just a prolonged search that takes longer than expected and a lot costlier than what we hoped. And so I think that I didn't see any like pricing estimates attached to that, but I know based on recent experience specifically on the first option, it is quite pricey once you get into these high profile staffing searches that you do spend quite a bit of money, and not only money but time that also it is also money, right, as far as resources. And so I do feel strongly about doing an internal recruitment option, the last option, as I do feel like we have a strong candidate here in the city of Mesa. So,
Thank you, council member. Anyone else? Mr. Summers? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I've been going over this. This is one of the biggest decisions that we'll ever make in a city manager. It hasn't been done in nearly 20 years. And I think what we have to consider in making this choice is what kind of city and what kind of challenges that we're facing currently and the future. Do we need to bring somebody from the outside, not just because a different skill set, but is it really a politically unstable environment where maybe an interim works? Do we want to bring somebody in with a different set of skills? I'll say when we hired Mr. Brady, and this even was before me in the original term, there was a lot of upheaval happening in Mesa. Massive amounts of growth had to happen. We were a bedroom community. There were limited number of job opportunities, but there was opportunity for growth. The revenue that we had, how the city financed itself was, can I say unstable? He says I can say unstable. It was unstable. We were right on the cusp of economic collapse, and that ended up in the Great Recession, and we just did not have that skill set. And doing a national search does make a lot of sense when you have those types of challenges. I don't think we're there. I think we've passed that, but we still have challenges. We're still troubled in how we raise our revenue. It's a little unbalanced. There are spending issues that we can overcome, but it's not the greatest of environment, but it's still stable. I know there's a lot of political upheaval from the changes that happen, but I don't think we're politically unstable, or there's instability in this city. I think we're doing fairly well. There's some voices right now, but I think it's doing fairly well where a permanent new city manager makes a lot of sense. I was looking at Dallas. I'm going to pick on Dallas a little bit. Dallas decided to go outside and do a search, and that has turned into an utter disaster for them. But I think they needed to do that process. The problem was when they went outside, it just turned political, because what you've described is that you would do the search, or an outside firm would do a search, and then bring us 3-4 candidates. But then it turned political in Dallas, like, well, why is it these 4 candidates? And I could see that potentially happening, although this is the best group of city council members you could have. But, there's always why is it this 4 and not somebody else? Who else was on the list? And the Dallas, the challenge with that kind of recruitment is that it brings into question the legitimacy of the selection. Some good candidates in Dallas dropped out because it just got really ugly. So if we're going to move forward and it's going to be an internal candidate, the only question I would have is, how do we add some legitimacy to this, to the public, right? So it's just not the 7 of us making a choice, but getting some input. We've been getting some input, by the way, already on candidates, but how do we how do we bring some sunshine to this process where others have the opportunity to meet with that candidate, give us some feedback before we make a final decision, some meet and greets, for example, let them talk about what the challenges are, how we're going to face those in the future, so that if we do make a choice to promote somebody within, people go, I see why you did that. That makes a lot of sense. So that would be my comment on how we might move forward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Ms. Pillsbury.
I appreciate the comments from all my colleagues. A lot of what I have been thinking and feeling has already been said. I think those of us that are touch the city of Mesa closely, I think we're all really proud of where we're at right now. And I've heard say that we're in the best financial position we ever have been in. And it's taken a lot to get to that place. I do really appreciate the work that Mr. Brady and those who work closely, those who are still here and who have left, have done over the years to get to this place. There's obviously, as has been mentioned, things that we can work on and do better, but we're in a really good place. And I agree that if it felt like we needed a completely different direction, then we probably would need to do a national recruitment. And I don't think right now where we're at, we need a completely different direction. I think we also don't want to just say status quo, go do exactly as we have been doing. But I think it makes sense with just the really incredible, great things that are happening in our city right now to keep moving in the same direction. So I would also support the internal candidate.
Thank you. Ms. Goforth?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the comments as well. I've been a little torn on this because this is the most important decision that we have to make as a council. This is the CEO of our city, the most important position in our city. And so initially, I would say I absolutely thought, because it's so important, and you look at how we've hired important positions in the city before, and we've gone out and we've made sure, even though we had internal candidates, we've gone out and we've made sure that we did a thorough search and that we picked the absolute best person. And so that was my natural tendency to think is that's what we should do. Being the 36th largest city in the country, there's going to be a lot of people interested. There's going to be a lot of great candidates interested. But I have a hard time because I agree with the comments that we are in a pretty stable position. We have a great candidate who might even be the best candidate if you went out and did a national surge, but somebody that understands the city, understands what we do well and what we need to work on a little bit. So I would support staying with an internal search at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams?
Well, thank you. Oh, let me lower my little electronic hand there. I concur with everything I've heard my colleagues say this morning. One of the downsides or one of the risks, I think, to doing a national search or hiring a firm, you don't always know what you're really going to get. I can think of a few situations, in my opinion, where we went outside, and in the case of Bill Jibginiak, I think we brought in a great candidate. There are a couple of other situations that I won't get into, but where we went outside and the results weren't quite as satisfactory in the long run. So I agree. This is the CEO of our city. We talk about the Mesa Way. I think we should look internally. I think a good CEO builds a wide and a deep bench behind him, and I think we probably have some at least one internal candidate that I'm aware of. There may be others who raise their hand and would like to be considered, but for all the reasons the other council members have just stated, I am in favor of internal recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. So I appreciate all the comments. I think some of my comments were based on my prior years of service in the city for 31 years and as a council member for the past 8. I think you put the two together, I got like 39 years or so seeing the city grow and progress. And it's just been phenomenal, and I've been appreciative of all the things that our city has done. And I've seen our city managers come from Mr. Petrie to Mr. Lester to Mr. Hutchinson and now to Mr. Brady. And so I really believe in succession planning and institutional knowledge for our city to be successful. And I think Mr. Brady has done that in preparing future leadership in our city, and I applaud him for that. And so with that, I'm going to join with my colleagues and go with an internal candidate and go with that process. So Terry and your team and Mr. Brady, I think you have your marching orders, right?
Sure, and Mayor, so let's just make sure we're all on the same page. So I hear that, that's great. Do you want us to open this up, or would you, for internal candidates, or are you comfortable that what would be the next person in charge in the city, as an assistant city manager, be the one that you want to interview? How would you like to do the process? I think what we need to do is receive
Well, we need to go through the application
yeah,
process.
so that's what I'm saying.
sure.
So, applications due by the end of the day today, and no, I'm not trying
And
to.
then it closes after 5 p.m.
Close of business today.
Why so long?
And then it
But then
closes at
wh-
5 p.m., right?
Yes.
Okay.
We would then have, we need to have a process where an application, a formal application is made, and then we would then schedule a time for the council. I think that's still appropriate for the council then to meet with a candidate, if that makes
Yes,
sense. And we'll schedule
exactly.
that. Okay, that's what we'll do then. We'll post the position. I think we have, what's the time we typically do for something internal, even internal candidates? We do it for like maybe
Couple of weeks.
A week, yeah. A week. We'll do it for a week, then there'll be a deadline, okay, a week from today at 5 p.m., something like that. And then we'll get that application, send it to the council, and then we'll schedule a opportunity for you to meet with them in an interview.
Okay,
Okay?
great. And I think to vice mayors, once we do that, have some public input too.
Yeah, I think I'd like to characterize this a little bit. We have a strong internal candidate, I think, and it behooves us to say, all right, this is our strong internal candidate. We're going to do our interviews and due diligence on that, and move this up. But presenting that person to the public and allowing them to say, we see why you selected this individual.
Right.
And then if that, for whatever reason, falls flat on its face, which I do not anticipate it would, but then we could progress to one of these other methods. So that's how I think we should
I think that's
characterize
fine.
We'll figure out what that looks like. We don't
Yeah.
have to do it at this.
Don't set this person up to be the target of everything people don't like about what you've heard recently. I think that
No,
could
no,
be,
no.
I think you have to manage that. I went through a public process, right? There were 3 of us. Each of us were put in a room over at the convention center. And the community was invited to come ask questions, but it was moderated by, I think my room was moderated by the city attorney, and I don't know the other rooms. And everybody had a chance to come and ask questions, but it was moderated. If there was a question that the moderator said, that's not why we're here kind of question, then they had to move on. So we can get to that point. I just want you all to be successful. I don't want that to be a forum for kind of open mic on the city.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting
No.
any particular model. I think we
Okay.
have time to figure out what
Okay,
that would
fair enough.
look
That's
like.
fair enough. Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll do our part. We'll post the position. We'll take the applicant and get it to the council and set up an opportunity for you to, I think, meet with the person first, and then we can do the public process before you make the final decision.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Very good.
Is the public process characteristic of hiring internally? Is that part of the
No,
system?
not internally, no. Usually internally, frankly, the decision is, we know who it is, it's the heir apparent. We hired the assistant police chief, and we put him in. We hire, maybe in the internal, for fire chief, we did interview three of you, four of you, 3 of you, and made a selection that way. But again, those were department directors, so I don't, make the distinction, so.
I don't know, sometimes media also gets involved in these things, and I don't know, I'm afraid of skewing
Why don't we
a
have this,
process
why don't we do
that's-
this? Let's go through, get the application in, get it to you, get that formality, have the meeting, you all have the interview, and then let's have that discussion after that. Does that make sense?
And we'll figure out how we want to
Yeah, we can
proceed
talk
after
about that
that.
down the road.
Let's do that.
Okay.
We've done public processes before and some, I mean, the police chiefs have met with folks.
Right,
When we
but that
did
was,
national.
yeah.
When we
Yeah.
did national
Well,
recruitment.
that's true, it wasn't national, but I still think that given the importance of the role that the city manager has, the public face of that, we should have some kind of process to add the legitimacy, because our community gets to meet that person. Whether it's moderated or not, we'll have that discussion later.
Yeah, we can talk, yeah, let's talk about that later.
You bet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Adams, anything else on the topic?
No, I'm satisfied with the direction we're moving in, and I think what Mr. Brady just suggested is a good process to proceed with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, ladies. Next, we'll hear from item 1B, a presentation on renovations of the police headquarters building, the holding facility in custody court area. Welcome, chiefs and Candace. Thank you, Chief Butler, and we have Chief Cutler here too. It's one of his first presentations as an assistant chief, so welcome to the group.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. My name is Dan Butler. I am the Executive Assistant Chief for the Police Department. I have with me today, as we've all acknowledged already, newly minted Assistant Chief Jeff Cutler for his first formal presentation in that position.
No pressure.
And Deputy City Manager Candace Canestraro. Yeah. So we're excited to be here today. This is something that this team and so many others that aren't here have been working on for the last 4 years. Members of this team have helped guide this process, but we have members of all over the city that have supported us, from city engineering, members of the police department, Mr. Butler, Mr. Brady. They've all given us guidance to get here to this point. So we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge all of those individuals. We're really here presenting on behalf of all the work that they've helped us do over the last several years. So as we go through this presentation, you're going to see some things, you're going to hear some themes that were really our guiding principles in getting to this place today. Some of those things are community connectivity and engagement, right? That we're talking about a building, but people in our community will utilize this building. So we put them first in how we get to this place right now. The next thing is employee wellness. You know, you'll hear us talk about the over 300 people that currently work and will be working in this building for probably the next 50 years. Beyond that, we really tried to make this an efficient workplace. So we looked at floor by floor, who's working on that floor, who they connect with within the building, and then how they connect with the public. So that was part of our design process going through this. And then to kind of build on that is just the synergies that we have with employees and the members of our community. We wanted to really enhance that through the design of this facility. So as we go through this presentation, you're going to hear us talking about 2 phases, because this project is really 2 phases. The first phase that we went to bond on was the renovation of the facility, 1st floor through 4th floor. As we were going through that process, some other things occurred that Chief Cutler will talk about, and we decided to add on a little bit of scope to solve for issues that were impacting us and would clearly impact us into the future. So getting into the next slide, I'm going to talk about the building, why we're here, why we need to do this. We're going to get into some of those themes that I already spoke about. And then as the process goes, I'll turn it over to Chief Cutler, and he'll talk about the holding facility within the basement of our building and our courts. And then all of the fun stuff will be done by Candace. So she's going to talk about a lot of the money that will go into building this. So getting into the building. So you can see some images of what the building currently is right here. And this building was built in 3 phases, the first one in 1974. So if you can think about that, the infrastructure of this building, the pipes, the electricity, the HVAC, all of that is 50 years, greater than 50 years old today. So, you know, you can clearly understand the need for us getting to this point and us wanting to do this. In the late 80s, we had an addition of the 3rd and 4th floors. Is that right?
We were thinking what's wrong with being over 50.
Well, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Because maybe our pipes and everything are a little old.
A little joint pain.
All right. Throw a little humor in this, okay?
Well, clearly you're doing well for any of those that happen to be over 50.
We're listening very intently there, Chief.
All right. Second phase of this was in 1988, and then in 1997 we had an expansion of the 1st and 2nd floors. So let's think about this building from a size perspective, right? Many of us have been to this building. We have an understanding of how it is. But if you think about when this building is done in comparison to other city buildings, in City Hall now and the tower, we're talking about the almost identical square footage. So it is a massive, massive building with well over 300 people working in this facility. So like it, you know, when you see it, you don't really understand how large this building is, but it is quite a large building within the city. So I'm going to get a little bit into the building condition right now. You heard me allude to that when we were talking about the need for getting to this point. You know, with the youthful age of the building, let me readdress that. But, you know, our mechanical, our electrical, our plumbing, a lot of the safety issues, the quality issues of the building, they do need to be addressed. In this process, we also looked at the elevators. It is frequent that our fire brothers and sisters come to our building and pull us out of the elevators because they get stuck. So there is something that needs to be addressed there. Quite embarrassing for me. So, and then the inefficient floor layout. Right, when we're looking at that, we're going to talk a little bit about where the stairwells are a little bit later and how we've addressed that to make the feel and flow a lot better within this building. And then last of all, you know, we were kind of stuck, or we are stuck in design and how we continue to maximize this space. So we can't really grow into the building as designed anymore. So the overview, right? So the next 5 slides, we'll kind of get into the specifics. There'll be some images, so you'll be able to see what the design team has been working on for the last almost 4 years. But this is what we were looking to accomplish within the themes that we spoke about a little bit earlier. So we're looking at full removal and replacement of all building systems. The interior, all of the internal working components of this building will be new upon completion of this building. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, life safety, and even emergency power. You know, we need a police department that can operate 24/7, even during times where, you know, there's power outages. The relocation of the existing stairwells to the exterior of the building. I did speak about how the stairwells going up and down from the basement all the way to the 4th floor, they're right in the middle of the building. And so all of that real estate, all of that space that could be utilized for our employees, for our community members coming in, it's really cut in half. So we're limited on how we can maximize the effective space of this building. We already spoke about the refurbishment of the elevators, but really this building renovation will take all of the internals of the building, including the walls, remove them, redesigned and then rebuilt in a facility that we intend, you know, greater than the next 50 years. So one of the other things, and I'll go right back to this, is we currently have parking and storage in the basement of the building. That space is not utilized to the maximum potential. So part of this design is to take that space and repurpose it for human space, for people and workspace. So in addition, we're also going to talk about our Fallen Officer Memorial. Many of you have been there, most of you have been there when we do our annual memorial service. We want to maximize that space to honor those men and women that have served before us and that have fallen in the line of duty. So it'll be moved over slightly to be at a more center place to the building. And in part of the design in some of our internal community spaces, you will be able to access that and see that from a lot of the spaces that we've built in the building. So it's visible from both outside the building and inside of the building. We're welcoming, we're designing the lobby, much like this building. When you walk into this building, the thing that kind of takes you is how we honor where we come from in this building. That has been core in what we're trying to do in this police headquarters building. So we want to take our city history and honor our city history through images, through previous, equipment, stories. That is something that has been really, really important to us as a police department. That has been really important to all of our employees and our design team to really stand up the history of the city of Mesa. And it's not just the police department, it's the city of Mesa, and also the police department. So that is something that, has been talked about for the entirety of my career, and we haven't really done a nice job up until recently of honoring where we have come from. We're adding the community room. You heard me talk a little bit about that in respect to our fallen officer memorial. This room is really designed to be a multi-purpose room. We can utilize this room for community gatherings. We can utilize this room for the chief to address members of community, to utilize it as press conferences. We've talked about having a space for all the schools that come down to the Mesa and they go to our museums. They can come to that space, utilize it for a lecture, education from our community engagement teams, or even have lunch, right? Like if it's a summertime, they can schedule, they can come in, and on their lunch break, they can bring the students into our building, do a tour of our building, and then be able to sit there and enjoy the space. Really, really important to us, particularly in this building, is natural lighting. The design and what we've worked on was to maximize how we can bring in natural lighting into this building. Some of you have been through the building, you've been on many of the floors, and it's pretty dark. We don't really maximize the design. Part of this, we 100% will maximize how much natural lighting that we can bring into the building. So here's some images. These are design images from the front of the building. We're really proud of what we did in this design. We kept the history of the building, but then we also brought it to a place that really brings respect to what we're doing in downtown Mesa. We looked at the campus, overall the campus, the new evidence facility, the crime lab, and we took design cues from that and added it to the front of this building. We really wanted this place to be functional. We wanted it to be something that our community can be proud of as they come and visit with their police department. Inside the lobby, we talked about it. You can see some of the design cues from City Hall into our lobby. It was super important for us to make this a space that is accessible to our community and then allow for ease of use and transactions, right? Every single day, our lobby is full of members of the community that are there to converse with us, to report a crime, to ask officer questions. So in design of the lobby, we wanted to make that as simple and unintimidating as possible. And for us, the way that we designed that was really, really important. One of the things that we're super happy about with this design is we now can have quiet spaces for an individual coming in to sit with an officer that's in a less secure portion of the building, and they can come in and have one-on-one conversations instead of broadcasting, maybe sensitive information in a lobby with a bunch of other prying ears. We don't currently have that. Sometimes even, years ago when I was a police officer, we would have to walk outside to the front of the building to have those type of sensitive conversations. So that's going to be something I think our community is really going to appreciate moving forward. We talked a little bit about the community room, so I won't go over this portion too much more, but the community room, it is a public room, and it's adjacent to the lobby. It's designed for ease of access. It allows us to highlight the memorial. If you look at the upper right photo, and it's a little bit smaller, but you can see from the inside of that community room, you can see the memorial right outside. So it slides over to the front of the building a little bit, and we're really maximizing that portion of the space.
Chief, what is the seating capacity of this area? You know,
Mayor Freeman, that's a great question.
just whenever, it's fine.
125? 125?
120.
120.
Yeah.
So when you're, and Mayor and Council, when you're looking at these particular depictions of this room, this is just putting the furniture in to see what the maximum capacity of seating with tables could be. This is not the furniture you would see in this. This would be multifunctional furniture, so ones that we can put away and just have open seating. We could have high tops if you want to do some type of a ceremony or an event in there. So I don't want you to get too worried about the furniture. This is just the layout of how many could you fit in there with tables and chairs.
Yeah, I just wonder the maximum capacity of the building, that area, so 125.
About
Okay.
120, 125, depending on how you set it up.
Yeah.
Part of the design is also, we have an overflow area that actually goes outdoors, but stays in a secure area. So it really gives it kind of that multifunctional feel, similar to we have here in City Hall, where we have the patio just outside these doors, but it's still part of City Hall. We've done a similar design here.
Great, very functional. Thank you.
A quick question about this room. Will this be a community room similar to the one on Mesa Drive? Or there's a smaller one, I think, at the main fire station down on First and Mesa Drive? Is it open to community groups that want to hold a meeting?
Mayor Freeman, Vice Mayor Summers, Councilmember Adams, absolutely. All of the building community rooms that we have at the various police stations are accessible to be reserved by members of the community. So this room would be exactly the same as the rest of those.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Duff.
Since we're stalled, I do have one question. Backing up a little bit to slide 6 at the entry. Right now, the building sits below street grade, and this appears to be at street grade, so I was just wondering.
Isn't that a great idea?
Okay, we're making that change. I just wanted to understand how that feels and flows.
Mayor Freeman, Vice Mayor Summers, Councilmember Duff, yes, what you're looking at is correct. So what we wanted this space to be, and what we don't have right now, we used to have a drive-through. We don't even have a drive-through anymore with parking spaces. We wanted this space to be functional for our community. In design, we talked a lot about having design features that when the students from the community come to visit us, there are things for them to do. I wouldn't say playground, but you can think of our Mesa Arts Center, and there are fun little benches that you can sit on that swivel around. So a lot of that was taken into consideration in working with the design of this to maximize that. There are also nice features that we designed in for annual memorial services or other events at the building where there's some sitting spaces on turf, utilizing, and for sure we'll have all of the safety features that we absolutely need through the design and bollards and all that, but it 100% is designed to be a welcoming space, as opposed to, and honestly,
Chief,
yes,
what's happened though, you've graded this differently.
That's correct.
Right? So we'd have to almost step back and look up and then see how they've graded this down. So now you're walking, well, at that point, at ground level into the building instead of having to go
Right.
like you're going spedunkling into a cave. So they've changed that, so it gives us strong impression. But you're gonna have to grade that front area, but that's how they've accomplished this, to get that very open and inviting look now.
And Mayor and Councilmember Duff, if we look at this, actually where the building sits and the street level are actually not that far off of each other. And so it's really filling in the space in between to bring it to more of a plaza, courtyard type of thing, and then not losing the parking, but moving the parking out to be street adjacent. And that allows us to have that kind of nice entryway where we can have ceremonies, we can have an area, more, like we said, a more passive kind of area for people to sit in, those types of
When
things.
you lose that wall, right? Isn't there a wall that kind of covers
There's
up
a
the front
wall,
entrance?
it's, so what you're looking at on the photo, on the illustration on the right is from the street. And so after the project is done, it will, there will be a slight grade, but you won't even be able to see it. It will connect the street to the front door.
I see. And so the bollards, of course, they're designed to go down, and you would bring those down for when there's an event, or is this a public safety, you know, a fire access? Because the police are already there. So is it for, you know, some kind of access? Is it an emergency access, or why the bollards?
Mayor Freeman, Vice Mayor Duff, the bollards are necessary because of the threats that we see all around the country all the time. You need them there to prevent vehicles from driving through the glass of the building. Things like that, you know, maybe don't happen as often in Mesa, but they could. So we have to be prepared for them. Certainly they could be removable during city events when we're, you know, bringing people in to celebrate whatever it is that we need to be celebrating. But the security feature, they're absolutely necessary.
So it's more of having an open presence, not having the security also,
Right.
but
That
it's
is
not
absolutely correct.
meant as really a functional part of going up and down for various reasons. It's just a way of being more welcoming, and the public is welcome to come into this courtyard and hang out, have a lunch, whatever.
You said it perfectly.
Yeah,
Okay,
actually, Mayor
all
and
right.
Councilmember Duff, there's a couple different areas in here. So one, the site is secure. So we want to make sure at the end of the day, this is a police headquarters and it will be a secure site. There are some areas in here where the bollards are there permanently. And then there are some areas where they will be removable. And so that we could do an event. The entryway to this is actually designed in a manner, if we chose to bring a food truck in to do an event there, we could remove the bollards to drive a food truck into the plaza.
Great, thank you. And then I'll just put one comment out there, just getting into the weeds, that we talk about the lighting with the neighborhood, or have some consideration when we did the evidence building. The lights are so bright, it looks like that corner is taking off or something. It's
Oh,
really
okay.
bright into the neighborhood.
Okay.
And if we have this, I know it's directly across from the Rosalie
Yep, yep,
courtyard, you know,
yep.
more residences.
Sure.
So we would just look at those considerations
Okay.
of how that would affect the
We
neighborhood.
can get more
on-
directed light in there, yeah. we
Yeah,
can do
so that it doesn't feel like it's,
Shining way out. Okay,
yeah.
We can do that.
Thanks.
I'll just add, I think security and have the bollards there is very important based on national events that have happened recently. And so having security in the area, whoever's congregating there, they'll be safe and know that nobody can harm them to that extent. So thank you. Continue on.
Thank you, sir. See if I could remember where I was at. So getting into the second floor, you heard me talk about the design of the first floor and how the intentionality is the members that have the most interaction from the community have the ability to interact with them. That isn't currently how it is, but the people that will be working there, and we surveyed all the members of the police department and who they needed to work with internally and externally, and allowed for that design. Well, the second floor will be our human resources section, and not everyone, but we want this floor to be welcoming to candidates. Those are members that want to join the City of Mesa team, the Mesa Police Department, and a lot of times when they come in, the few interactions they have are in the hiring process with police department employees. So we want that to be a positive experience. You know, years ago when recruitment was a little bit different, we talked about every interaction that we have with members of the community. Wanting this position is probably the position of police officer or any of the other positions that we have is one of the only interactions that they have. So that experience should be an experience, whether they get hired or not, that they think so highly of the City of Mesa and the Mesa Police Department that they tell their friends and family that, hey, if you want the best place to work, go to the City of Mesa. We kept and you can see here, we kept the original design of the lobby from the original build of the first and second floor in 1974. 1974 here. So it is an open area. So when you walk into the lobby, that is one of the few places that we can allow for a higher ceiling, so a more grand entrance. And so on the second floor, this will be open to the lobby. And so all of the great design features that you can see, those members of the community that are coming in, working with the police department, seeking employment, have the ability to get a different vantage point of that. The third floor, this is our training and wellness floor. So we currently have a training section in the building. It's in the basement of the building. It's dark. It's dank. Members of the police department from all over, right? So nearly the 1,500 people come to headquarters, and they go through training. What we wanted this place to be is a central hub for people that are coming to headquarters for computer training or any other trainings that we offer. This area also consolidates the over 300 individuals that we have working in this building so they can come together during their breaks. Currently, as it sits, every floor has a little hodgepodge of a break room that we've tried to put together throughout the years, where members that are working on that floor will congregate for coffee or snacks or to have their lunch. But then they're really segmented off from the rest of the people that are working in the building. We designed this in a way that people come together in this space to collaborate, to have conversations, to get to know people that they may not know, all in one space. We also incorporated our mother's room that, it isn't, it's something that we've worked with, but this place will be something that we're more proud of for our employees. And then we brought our tactical operations center and training rooms in an adjacent space so we can maximize those when we need to. So that is
Actually,
my
before
portion
we
of it.
move on,
Yeah,
because I
absolutely.
think we're at a
Vice Mayor.
segue here. Thank you. Because you're going to segue into the holding facilities, and there's several slides on that. So to close out this discussion, I think a lot of what you've presented to us have been really outstanding. But the one thing I'd like to hear a little bit more on is what changes are being made to accommodate the everyday working officer that's coming in and out of this facility, from changing rooms, bathrooms. It talks about wellness here. What's the weight room look like for their preparedness? I know there's some wellness, behavioral health wellness initiatives that are excellent, but they're shoved into closet space because that's the only space that's available. So what have we done in creating this space that really helps the everyday officer coming to work?
Mayor Freeman, Vice Mayor Summers, I love that you asked that question because it has been part of the original design. I know I've alluded to everybody in the building got a say into how the building was designed. We surveyed them. We talked to all the individuals and we got their input. So from a functional fitness standpoint, that's incredibly important. Our police department has really doubled and tripled down on taking care of our employees under the leadership of Chief Cost. We have entire teams that really work hard on the mental, spiritual, and physical wellness of our employees. On this floor, we did consolidate all of the different fitness areas from the building into one portion. It's going to be a place where people can go and take care of their bodies. They can relieve a little bit of stress. There is quiet rooms also associated on this space. Many of you have heard us talk about our defensive tactics program, our police jiu-jitsu program. Aspects of that were built into this facility, so where our members can come into the third floor and work in the defensive tactics room. So it will be a mat room where we can practice, taking individuals in custody who don't want to be taken into custody, away from the pain compliance model where we utilize pain to get somebody to submit, into a mechanical leverage-based model. Those things 100% have been built into this facility. When we talk about locker rooms, there is a portion of locker rooms for all of our members in the basement of the building that work out of that building.
The dank basement.
It won't be dank.
Yeah.
Too much further.
It'll be well ventilated so that,
Yeah.
summertime, gear gets really dank. This is
Correct.
probably why the basements is like that. So well ventilated lockers and those types of things with plenty of space that the officers can safely store their equipment and change.
Mayor Freeman, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Summers, absolutely. So that has been in part of the design with the HVAC system and how we've designed that with proper ventilation. So those spaces will be spaces that are modern, that do resemble spaces that should be built in 2025 as opposed to 1974. So it'll be significantly improved over what we currently have in the building.
Are we
And-
including HEPA filters in that ventilation? And
Yes.
that might be a little bit more detail
Yes.
on,
Yes.
from,
And Mayor and Vice Mayor Summers, I remember that we're taking everything out, right? So every infrastructure, we're gonna have exterior walls and floors and a roof on this building, and everything else is gonna be new. So everything is gonna be the more efficient, energy efficient, the air conditioning, the airflow, everything is gonna be new on this building.
okay, which is a great opportunity to make sure that we get it right and that we don't have problems in some of the older facilities. We want to make sure that they're healthy, plenty of space. The restrooms are always a point of contention is because they tend to be small and inadequate, no great shower facilities. So if we're going to tear it out, I want to be sure that the everyday officer gets exactly what they need for modern policing and being ready to hit the street.
Thank you. Before we move on, Councilmember Heredia.
Yeah. And I like the descriptive use of dank in this presentation. But as far as the use of technology, I know data and visualization plays a bigger part in how we fight crime. And I know you have meetings like ComStat at this facility. I don't see a lot of or mention. There's probably items that you're improving as far as technology, but I don't know. Is there a strong emphasis on the technology pieces? On how do you kind of use that piece to further the work that you all do in the community?
Mayor Freeman, Councilmember Heredia, as part of the design, we have taken that into consideration. So we have taken into consideration the integration of the entire building through data, through fiber, to make it a connected building from top to bottom. So if you think about aspects of our real-time crime center and how we can pipe live operations into rooms in the building, the tactical operations center, the chief's conference room, as things are happening in the field, all of that has been taken into consideration in design to maximize it, to make it efficient, to make it something that will last for another 50 years. We've tried to take into consideration how technology will adapt and where it'll go into the future. Now, none of us are, many of us are genius, Jeff and Candace, but none of us can predict the future as to where technology will lead us, but we're doing everything in our power to design this in such a way that we're at least ready for any advancements in technology.
Perfect. Yeah, I think with the innovations that we've had with the real-time crime center and different things that you all are deploying as far as visualizations and data, I think it makes sense to how do you integrate those pieces to help provide a broader vision when you train folks and you have these important meetings at this facility, right? So appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Any more questions? Don't see any. Thank you. Move on.
Okay, so transitioning to, this is phase 2. You heard me talk about it at the beginning. This actually is something that we saw that we could address through this process, but wasn't included in the original scope of the project. So we're talking about the 2 separate phases of this project moving forward. So Chief Cutler.
Morning, Mayor and Council. As Chief Butler stated, this is project number 2, the holding facility and in-custody court, which is located currently in the basement. Just a little background on the holding facility. It's a temporary holding for our subjects we bring in until they are either, if it's a misdemeanor, processed through IA court, or they're being transported down to Maricopa County for felony charges. We process over 17,600 people per year on average through our facility. And just to give you a comparison, some of our neighbors, Tempe, Scottsdale, they process about 9,000 people through their holding facility. So it's a very busy place in our department. Now, over the years, as you can see, we have had upgrades, trying to improve upon our capacities, but that created some difficult issues. So several years back, we had the National Institute of Jail Operations come in and do an assessment of our jail facility. Through that, they noted some items that we needed to address. Luckily enough, we were just in the beginning stages of pre-design for our headquarters remodel, so we were able to incorporate those issues, addressing those issues into our design now. The recommendations you can see up here, that we had volume issues, so we have one entry and one exit point in our current holding facility, which creates a bottleneck. It's not efficient, it's not safe for anybody coming in and out of our facility. So in the new design, we have an ingress and egress points and more efficient flow. We have areas that we can also do large group processing. So when somebody comes back, we bring a jail van back from county, we can do group intake at one spot. So it's more efficient, safer, and it's better for everybody involved, including the detainees that are there. During our peak demand times, we run into capacity issues. So there's often we have to say the jail's closed in except for mandatory bookings only because we don't have enough space, right? So through efficiency and design, we can actually add some capacity for those peak times. The safety issues, as you can see on the slide, we have some blind spots because of as we expanded, we just kept moving in the basement. So now we created some blind spots, some distances from our control center. So with this new design, we were able to take out those spots, put our control rooms right in the middle of the facility, and so it creates a better view of all of the operations at one time from one location. Our current operations center is pretty small. They have to monitor all operations that are going on in the jail. There's only several people can be in there at one time. You have monitors to view. So as we expanded that, changed it, we can actually have better control over all the facility functions that are going out one time from a control center. The cell doors are, well, some of them from probably 1974. They're antiquated, and in that NIJ report, they noted that we need to modernize our cell doors and for safety and for ease of access. And those are just issues that have been addressed in this new design. We have some different isolation cells that we don't currently have capacity for. So when you have somebody that needs to be separated from everybody else, we have dedicated isolation cells built into this program. And then when people leave the facility, currently they go out the one ingress egress point and they're walking out in the traffic lane of our vehicles that are coming in and out. It's unsafe. So now we've created a pathway so people can be released and go straight out without walking into our traffic pattern for our officers coming in and out. Like I said, we were able to incorporate the design into our design, the features that the NIJ report noted. And our main emphasis here in the whole process was to emphasize detainee and employee safety. Through our design, we were able to accomplish all the issues that were noted and create a flow for our officers and our detainees to come in, be processed quicker, to be more efficiently handled with all the processing that has to take place, the safety checks, and then housed in the appropriate spot for themselves. And then they'll go to into IA court when they're being seen for misdemeanor charges. The IA court right now, it's functional, it works, but it's not modernized. This new design will actually modernize the IA court. It's safer for the staff that work there, and we're able to have a dedicated space for defense attorneys to come in and speak to their clients and process people through in a more efficient manner. Let's see what else. The last thing I want to point out is that we had some space down there that we could utilize. As Chief Butler alluded to, we actually created a NIBIN room, and our NIBIN is where we do some ballistic testing for our gun crime intelligence squad. So we were able to incorporate it into that basement, along with the redesign of our locker rooms down there for the staff that work in the building. As you can see in some of these photos here, this is the current holding facility, and you can see the picture there of the control room. It's very small. There are 2 people in there, and it's pretty tight to monitor everything that's going on. The new design will handle that. And you can see some of the cell doors, the cells themselves, and it'll be modernized so we have a better work environment for our staff, safety, and for the detainees' experience when they're in our jail. And then that's the pictures of the new court design. The upper right picture is where the in-custody judge would sit with their staff, and then behind the glass would be our detainees that are being brought in to see the judge for the first time in their initial appearance. It improves the workflow for them, the pre- and post-court appearances, so they have paperwork they have to receive, and then if the judge decides that they're being released, there's paperwork for that, or if they're being held, then they'll go through processing to be transported out of our facility, because our facility is really only for a temporary hold up to 24 hours. And it also establishes an entry-exit point for in-custody court. Right now, they all come through the same door and in and out. When you come in one spot, you'll be processed, you see the judge, and then you'll exit afterwards to get your paperwork and go back out to where either being released or to be transported. So with that, I will turn it back over to Chief Butler.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, we will be transitioning to Candace's portion. This is the most exciting portion of this presentation, and I understand you'll have very little questions.
So when we've talked about all the functionality and the needs that we have in this particular building for both the headquarters itself and then also the holding facility and in-custody court. As we started this project, it is funded by a couple different funding sources. So we did, over the years, save up money, set money aside, knowing that this project was going to be a priority for the city for the design. And so over time, we had saved up some general fund money, and that was paying for the design of this particular project. In 2022, we went out for public safety bonds with this project listed, and those were approved by the voters for $44 million towards this particular project. When we identified the issues that we have with holding facility and in custody court and wanted to add those to the design, like we said today, it was perfect timing to understand what the needs were at the same time we were starting our design process. We added those to the scope of the design. At the same time, we reviewed funding sources, and the police department prioritized $10 million in public safety sales tax to put towards this to accommodate that additional scope of the holding facility and in custody court. That led our original project estimate to $57 million. As we went through the design, it has taken us a few years to go through this design to make sure that we are meeting the functionality needs and creating a building that can be used, including growth, for up to 50 years. When we come to the final project estimate, our final project estimate came in, our budget is $62.7 million. That does include contingency in there as well. It's a 5% contingency. The headquarters renovation portion of the project is $52.9 million, including the contingency. Adding in the holding and the in-custody court added about $9.8 million in construction costs. That leads us to the 62.7. As the police department was looking at this, we have reviewed this project repeatedly. We have scaled back whatever we can to keep the functionality of the building. When it comes to the holding facility, the project as designed will replace the capacity we have today, plus get us our efficiencies, take care of the safety issues, and will also rough in a second pod, which will allow for future growth. That's why we feel that this building will last for the 50 years, because we can come back, finish out that pod at a later time to meet the growth capacity that we need going forward. But it would rough in for this project today. We would have that ready and future available. The police department has identified $5.7 million in our recent 2024 public safety bonds as a priority over some of the projects that were identified there, specifically the training facility, which will take additional time to understand the true needs of that facility, do the design work till we have a true estimate of what that project will cost. So in the meantime, this is the priority for the police department, is to fully fund and develop this particular project.
That's it. You're right. That was really fast. Any questions from council? So what you present is all inclusive to everything that we're, on the renovation of the
So
building?
Mayor, everything that you have heard us talk about today is included in that total project cost. And again, we would be roughing in additional capacity for the holding facility to come back at a later time for a separate project to finish out that. But we would have all of the capacity and the safety issues taken care of.
What would be the pod? What would you build out in the pod area that you were talking about?
It would be, because it's in the basement, we do need to put in the infrastructure, so the plumbing, because it's going to be in the concrete. So one of the areas we showed that we have drive-in parking right now that's in the basement. So what you don't notice when you look at this building, it's on a hill. So the basement at the front of the building is a full basement that you would think about. The basement on the back is actually open. And right now it's used for parking. So the project as designed today would enclose that, make that interior space, including some space for our detention, for some training and offices for our detention officers. And then it would rough in, we call it rough in, that's the engineering term, because it's more than just the walls. It's actually roughing in all of the plumbing and having all of the infrastructure there and ready, but it's not putting in the walls, the doors, the furniture. It's not putting in the, most of it's the technology of the control room. So it'd be a second control room that would look at that particular pod. So that's what's not included in this, but we would be future ready to come back and put that in at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spilsbury?
Yeah, I was just wondering on the 2024 bonds, that bond money. So I know we had like several different projects planned for that money. So where are we moving money around on those bond projects for public safety?
So Mayor and Councilmember Spilsbury, that is the money that was identified for the public safety training facility. So PD and fire have been in discussions to figure out what that timeline is, what those needs are. They are coming up with scenarios they feel comfortable moving forward using the funds on this particular project, since this is the priority, knowing that we do have a timeline for need assessment, design, and so forth to truly know what we need at that facility.
So just because this is much further along than that training facility is, we can shift money, but potentially we might need that money for the public training safety facility? Put your finger on it longer. Oh, it's
It was
dead.
blank. Knocked him out.
All right, sorry. So 2020, 22, when did we put the training dollars in? 22?
20.
So in 2022, the public safety bond question had, we think it's about $40 million? $41 million for the training, public safety training area. So that included, obviously we have police and fire out there at the training facility. So it included working with both groups to enhance the training. That's underway, and we still need to move forward with some of the infrastructure. What we're doing here, in order to move forward with the holding facility, in order to meet this now budget estimate, is we're going to reprogram
5.7
million of that 41 million to go in so we can get this project completed. We feel like that holding facility is a priority. We're going to be in there anyway with the PD headquarters are really kind of all connected. So that'll give us time for the next year or so to continue with the training facility, looking at doing more detailed design concepts and moving forward with a lot of the infrastructure. It means we'll still be spending the money, but we probably won't be able to accomplish, we won't obviously be able to do all the facilities and training facilities we would have liked under the 41. So we'll have to come back at some future date for bonds to come back and get that additional
So
dollars.
this says, the slide 16 says that the 5.7 is coming from the 2024 public safety bonds. So you're saying it's not from 2024, it's from earlier ones. I think in my head, I was thinking it was for our centralized call center or whatever we're calling that.
Oh, no,
But
no,
this is
no.
public,
Public-
but you're saying the money for the public training facility was before
Yes,
2024?
it was 22.
22 was for, okay. So we're just shifting money over.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about that. I'm a little confused by that because we've had discussions in the past, Mr. Brady, about once we bond and we provide a description to the public, we
Yep.
cannot shift.
Right, and so because this is within the public safety question, these dollars,
Okay?
we can use it within all public safety purposes.
So, for instance, if we bonded for active transportation and we shift it, even though it remains an active transportation, that's okay?
Yeah.
Because that was a discussion you and I had about.
Right.
You can't shift projects. You can't shift money between projects that weren't described to the public and what they voted on.
Fair enough.
So you're saying if it's in a category of public safety, it's in a category of active transportation, it can be shifted.
Right, I mean, the point is, I think what yes, I hear what you're saying. So that's a council discretion, right? We can move it because, well, here's the choice. We don't move it. We don't do the holding facility today. We leave it as it is. We have to wait 2 years, come back for another bond election and ask for that money. And it'll obviously be more expensive because we'll have to leave everything as it is. I think what happens is when I'm talking about streets, libraries, things that are very standalone, it's very difficult for us because we're out there talking to people about building a street, building a library, and not doing that. I think in this case, because it's public safety, it's more of our internal opportunity, we had to make it, it's a tough choice. I mean, this choice wasn't made until a couple of weeks ago because they came to me and said, we're short. I said, I need 2% budget cuts. So, I mean, it was like, it's a choice.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying we need some consistency to understand.
Okay.
It wasn't presented as it's a council decision. And if that is, then that's fine. I understand
Okay.
that. But we just need to be consistent across the board is what I'm saying, please.
Okay.
Good question. Vice Mayor?
Along those lines, and I think it's about being open and transparent to the folks who are voting on what they're voting for, is the issue, so I agree with that. And then along that line of questioning, the public, it says $10 million were identified from the public safety sales tax that was passed back in 2018-ish. What, is this an allowed use under that? Because I thought that was for personnel, training, equipment.
Facilities.
Is it facilities also included in that? Okay.
Yeah, and we actually identified that in the previous budget.
Okay.
Council.
Because I wasn't here when that vote happened, I just remember a lot of discussion around that was for hiring police and fire.
Yeah, but no, it's
It's allowed
It's allowed,
within
yeah,
that.
but that vote didn't specifically say training. It didn't have every item. It set up an opportunity for us to make those decisions later, and it created a broad description of what it could be used for.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're good. All right, thank you.
Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Oh, I'm sorry, was someone else going to speak?
Yes, you.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple comments. The overarching themes I hear in this presentation are safety for officers and members of the public, efficiency, well-being of our officers and other public safety employees, and I think those are important things. The other observation I make is if you amortize the cost over the projected life of the building of 50 years, you're looking at just a little over $1 million a year, which isn't a bad deal, I don't think. And my last comment would be the concerns raised by Councilmember Goforth and Vice Mayor Summers about transparency and the perception perhaps that the public might have when they feel they're voting for something that is described in such a way that we're transparent and that we make sure people understand that we have that broader umbrella of public safety, and that could include this, that, or the other thing. So I'm not questioning what Mr. Brady has reported on. I'm just agreeing that I think we need to be consistent and very transparent in that. But I'm very impressed with the presentation. I think we're doing it for all the right reasons.
Yeah, and to be clear, thank you for that, but Mr. Adams, but we are not doing anything different than what we said in the bonds. Right? We're out of money. So the choice is, I mean, we'll be glad to, and that's the choice we didn't want to do, is only do a portion of this project and not do the holding facility. But because it's a public safety question and we won't have spent the $40 million in 2 years, we made the decision that, well, let's take the money from that project because it'll still be there in 2 years. Whereas we could have the holding facility built with this project. So I don't think I think the transparency is all of this was identified in the questions that we brought before council or before the public in the public safety question. So the question about public safety, and then it lists different projects. These are projects that were listed. We just didn't have enough funds. So we will come back. We did this for the Evans facility. We had to come back twice to bonds for the council or for the public, right? It was in, I can't remember the dates, which year it was in. And we said, but it's not going to be enough. And we went back again to the public in another question to add more money to it. So essentially, we'll probably be doing that for the training facilities also.
Okay, Mr. Redio.
He's going to let me go since it's on this topic still, and then he'll switch topics slightly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would also just maybe like some more understanding and clarity on when we're bonding and we're going out to the public. Are these ideas of projects? Are they actually things we're planning on doing? I know, like, for example, the 20 million allotted to Idea Museum, if we then said, well, we're going to just throw it over to the Museum of Natural History because it's still a museum, that wouldn't go over so well because this is something, so, or like where the pools are, but like I know we've talked about the rec center for my district. We might end up moving that to a different location. Like, I guess I'm not sure when we go out to the public and we say, this is what we're going to use the money for. And I get the point that maybe we're staying in the same category, but there are certain things that the public wants in those areas or certain projects or whatever. I don't know. How fluid is this?
So again, like I'll say it again, all of these projects, not only were they in the public safety question, they were listed as projects.
For sure.
So we're not taking it and going and doing a completely different
We're moving money
facility
from
somewhere
one
else.
proposed project to another proposed
That
project.
they were all both are articulated on the question.
Right.
Right? It's just like the question is, and what we're running up against is, and this isn't the first time, right? Council's already done this a couple of different times. We did it with the Evans facility. We've done it with some others where we don't have the funds. By the time we get to we develop the bond question, we get it on a ballot, we get it approved, and then we get around to designing it, sometimes those budgets are very different. And so sometimes what we've been able to do is like, okay, other projects that were on that same bond question are just not as far along, and they're not because we staggered them, right? We don't. Everybody gets the impression that you approve the budget and you're going to do all these projects at once. That's not the case, and so they do get sequenced out into the future. So all we're saying is it's a project that was identified in the bonds in 2022. We're just saying we're going to use some of those funds to complete a project that was identified as a priority and do that now. Because the other option is not do it, hold off on the holding facility, and it'll be more expensive, but we'll come back in 2 years and have another question directly for the holding
No,
facility.
I think it makes perfect sense to do this right now. This is a need, obviously, while everything else is under construction. It wouldn't make any sense to hold off on this and to not take that 5.7. I mean, I'm completely in support of using this money for this particular thing as part of this.
So to your
Just
example,
bigger question.
Yeah, to your example, though, that you use, we wouldn't be able to take the money from the Idea Museum and turn it to the Natural History Museum because it wasn't on the list of projects that were being considered, right? And I can't remember on that question, whatever was on there, I can't remember all the other questions that were on our list of projects, but that's how we try to keep them in that group. And they have to be something that was articulated as part of that. We can't all of a sudden create a
can't just
new
be
idea
anything.
that we're going to use. So that's why we're very careful about keeping it in public safety, a project that was identified for bonds in the past.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Smith, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll just add to what Chris said is that, and that's what other cities do. It was partly a conversation about a year ago with our bond council about this topic, and that every city, and I'll give, except with one exception that he told me about, when they go out for the bonds, the bond is a question of a category, let's just say public safety, and then the city will provide examples of projects, but those examples of projects don't bind the council that they have to do those projects or they can't shift with them. They're intended to be examples of the projects, and they are a public commitment of council of what they intend to do, but they're not part of the actual question. And so if you want to be able to shift money, and this has happened in the past when you run out of money, or when in the Great Recession when actually prices dropped and you had more money, and so you're able to add some projects. The one exception he told me about was the city did bond for specific projects, and then shortly after that election, one of the projects was no longer necessary, and so that now they were locked in. And so cities don't bond to specific projects, they bond for categories and purposes, and then provide examples of what they're going to be used for.
That's great clarification. And Mr. Brady, I appreciate your clarification as well. The only thing about that is that we kind of go on this roadshow and we say, here's what we're doing. And so people, I don't think that they realize that these are examples and not necessarily
So, yeah,
will it happen.
no,
And so I'm not
you're-
faulting it, any
no,
of us,
you're-
but I'm
it's a-
just
and
saying
it's
we
a
might
great-
want to.
No, it's a great example. And Councilman, I think that's why it was hard for them to convince me to do this, okay? So it's because to your point, it's kind of like like you said, we go out this goodwill and create this. I think moving money through from a public safety training facility to a holding facility, we felt like we would be okay with that because we'd identified it as a project that needed to be done. We still could do the training facility, the remaining amount, but I think what we're going to tell you is we probably need to do more than what's going to be left of that $40 million. So I think you said it right. That's part of a really, well, it's not legal. It's kind of this, trust relationship we have with our community. But when it's kind of an internal kind of movements, I don't feel quite as, it's a little different.
No, I
There's
would
a reason Corey's in the back because she's concerned that Dan is taking money out of the training facility that should be going to fire. So that's the issue there. But when it comes to other community projects like streets and things that are really specific to a neighborhood that we've kind of presented.
Or a museum. I mean, I think it's one of those things, we do strive for
We try
transparency.
really hard to stay within
and
that.
information, and
Yeah.
inform people. And so sometimes, I guess, maybe too much information.
It's a delicate balance
Yeah.
when we're out there, because on one hand, you want to have people motivated and interested in supporting something, right? But on the other hand,
It might
things shift a little. We don't do this very often. And in this case, we just feel like it's an opportunity because we won't have spent that $40 million in 2 years. And maybe there's an opportunity then to add to that again. And probably we'll have a lot more detail. What we're going to be doing now with the training facility area, there's just a lot of infrastructure, roadway access, getting power in there that we just need to do now. And then we can come back with the very specifics after that.
And this is a whole nother discussion, but I say it just because I think this is a bit of good timing, is that is something that I know that we've talked about, is that time frame, that timeline between bonding and building that we need to work on. I know in the last several years through COVID, it's been out of our control, but squeezing that a little tighter because of these exact issues thing, if it's 6 years down the road, prices have changed, design has changed. So anyway, just make that comment that if we could work on squeezing that time frame, it'd be great.
Before we move on, maybe we can have this topic in our planning session coming up.
What's that topic? What would you like? I know, what in specifically about this or about what?
No, about the bonds and the clarity. And
Oh, okay. Well, we could provide.
Just a little snippet of
One we could do,
strategic
the council would go for it is maybe it's time, we've been working on this internally with the most recent bonds that were approved and kind of coming back to you with kind of like our sequence of timeline of when those would take place. Ones that are, like the Aggie Museum's, I think he's spending it already, or he's close, because there's some that are ready to go and some that are out further, and we could come back and talk a little bit about that, what that looks like.
what's been bonded, what hasn't been done. I know you all did that last, in 2024. You
Sure.
said, here's the percentage of the bonds that have been spent. Here,
Yeah.
in these categories, here's haven't. But if we could get an update
We may
of
do that as a study session, Mayor, only because we're trying really hard to give council the maximum amount of time for you. So,
Okay, that's
but we
fine.
can have a conversation about it. I don't know, that may,
We can
Could take up
discuss
a
it.
lot
It
of
just
time.
came across my brain.
yeah, we'll have a conversation. We'll set that up for a future conversation.
Councilmember Heredia?
Just to change topics on the detainee activities, you list here Fiesta Substation and Northeast Public Safety. Is the plan to shut down this location immediately, or is there like, because you do handle, I think Chief Culler, you mentioned 17,000 people a year, so that's quite a bit of a load, and I don't think the Fiesta facility can take a lot of that, right? And so because it's smaller, and so what's the timeline on the detainee side or this activity as far as shutting down here and then moving people to the different spots that you mentioned here?
So Mayor, Mayor, Councilmember Heredia, we have an extensive plan that our jail operations folks have put together. Obviously, it's going to be impacting when we shut down to do the remodel at our headquarters.
Sure.
So we have identified places, and there's plans put together for the Fiesta substation. Obviously, Northeast is not open yet, but it'll be here in the summertime. It'll be open, and that facility has a capacity to be able to process through not quite the same amount we can do down at our holding facility, but a pretty good amount. And so there's plans. We're going to do a lot more transportation. We're going to have to move people in and out of those facilities a lot faster than we do with the holding because we don't have the space to house them. But those plans are being put together and ready to go by our administration staff, jail administration staff. So
And
we
you
have
men-
plans for that.
You mentioned because there's a facility in the Florence area, right, that we send people, and then downtown. Is there other places that we send people, or is that
So
what's?
We're gonna. So one of the things we're gonna do in this remodel is for our misdemeanor charges, we have an in-custody court. We're gonna do in-camera in custody at these locations. We don't have facilities to have an in-custody court in like Fiesta.
Sure.
So the judges will be in camera. As soon as they're seen, if there's misdemeanor charges and the judge decides to hold them, then just like per our contract with CoreCivic, we transport them to CoreCivic for housing.
Sure.
When they're felony charges, after processing, they're transported down to the county jail.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Adams? You good?
Yeah, no, I have no further questions, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, does that conclude your presentation? Anything else?
No, that's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank
So
you.
this will be on your next council agenda, is that correct?
So correct, on your February 24th council agenda will be the GMP for this particular project. So the GMP will be about just around $52 million plus contingency.
Okay, very good. All right, excited. Let's build it.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes, Ms.
Or
Goldberg.
just a final comment is I appreciate that you all have preserved this building, not just decided to knock it down and rebuild, which in some cases may be easier, but I think that that's important, and I'm glad you decided that. You've obviously put a lot of thought in this operationally, how things work, as well as for employees. And I think it shouldn't be understated how when the city of Mesa renovates or builds a facility, they do it with community in mind, and how do we connect the community to this building or to this operation of whatever this department does. This building's a good example of it. The Northeast Public Safety is a good example. There's a community room. So anyway, I think that that's important for us to highlight, is that when we do these renovations in these buildings and facilities, that we make it, we invite the public in, and we make the public a part of whatever we're doing in that building. So I think it's important to say, and I appreciate it. So thank you.
I'll just tag on to that we make big investments into our public safety sector, and our residents and our community, our businesses expect that. And so I appreciate all that's going in there. This is special to me because my great-grandparents owned the property that the police station is built on, so I have fond memories of that. Every time I go by there, I climbed in that fig tree on the property. So anyway, I think overall, as we move monies around, the overarching theme is we support our public safety, and we need to do these timely so that we're successful in our investments in the future, and the costs don't, costs are continue to rise up, and they're not getting any cheaper. So I understand the council concern, and we can discuss this internally to make sure we're clear about everything that's happening. So we expect you to do the same. So with that, thank you. All right, we'll move on. With that, we'll move on to item 2, is to acknowledge receipts of board minutes and approval of executive session minutes. Do I have a motion? Okay, Vice Mayor Summers and Councilmember Spilsbury. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Hearing none opposed. With that, next is our current events and conferences attended. Council members, do you have anything you want to? Am I right?
It's a library economic development.
I think you said executive, yeah.
That's what my notes say. But there's library advisory minutes and economic development advisory board minutes. I did. Approval of executive session minutes.
Oh,
Disregard that?
yeah.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
Okay, so let's do it over. We're going to approve library advisory board and economic development
So
minutes. So, okay, so we're back. We good? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay,
Aye.
aye. That was unanimous. Okay. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council members, do you have anything you'd like to share? Ms. Spilsbury.
Last week, since we didn't have a meeting on Thursday, there are a few things I wanted to mention. I was able to stop at the Red Mountain Library to make Valentine's. We've had people doing that at all 3 libraries for our seniors in our community, and I love, so I loved participating in this, and just so many community members came out to do that, and it was a really beautiful event. Also, last week I was able to host a group of high school students from the Heartwood Montessori School in our city hall, give them a tour and talk about civic engagement and civic virtues, had a great discussion with them. Councilmember Duff and I attended, we run Mesa at Lincoln Elementary last week. And our fire and police departments are so great to support that and be out there. The kids just love it. I also attended a legacy and leadership event in Phoenix. It was put on by the Center for the Philosophy of Freedom through the University of Arizona. And that was a really neat event. And then this week I went over to Mountain View and talked to their youth and government group and talked about local government and had a really, really great discussion. I just love our teenagers. If I haven't mentioned that enough, they're great. So that was it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Others?
Just real quick, thank you everybody for Mesa hosted the Mesa Marathon with, of course, the organizers there. Congrats to Mr. Brady doing the half marathon, right?
I finished.
You won.
I finished. I did. I finished.
I was only there to hold the tape for the winners there,
Oh,
so I didn't run myself.
Sorry,
But congratulations to everybody, and thanks for the patience. I know a lot of road closures during that time, and appreciate. I think we've done a great job in letting the public know weeks in advance and the day of, and moving those aspects of our streets closures faster than before. So thank you everybody for participating on that. And I think there was like 10,000 people.
That was a lot, yes.
That participated in the
Yeah, I
marathon,
think
the
that sounds about
largest marathon I think here in the state and probably the country, or the state here that was mentioned. So appreciate that, please.
Well, it's also a qualifier for the Boston Marathon. I mean, this is a big deal. Ms. Goforth, anything? Ms. Duff?
Always have a few things.
Then we'll go to Mr. Adams. You're on deck.
Mesa Leadership Training and Development class held a game night fundraiser at the Post, and they're raising money for a shade canopy over the new soccer field at the Ross Farnsworth YMCA. It was very well done. Congratulations to the class, and I think it was successful for them. They had raised a majority of it, and hopefully after that night of all the casino games and such, they were able to get all the dollars they needed. On Sunday, I was a judge at a Mactastic event. It's a vegan macaroni and cheese event hosted by Zen Nights at the Nile Theater. And actually, it was pretty good. I mean, I went from barbecue judge, which was, like 30 pieces of meat in a couple hours, to vegan. So this vegan thing was quite nice. I'm a judge for all foods. But anyway, it was well done and well attended. Even on Super Bowl Sunday, there was over 100 people there. And the other night, it's Tuesday night, I believe, I attended the Arizona Statehood 113th birthday celebration hosted by Arizona Talks at the Western Spirit Museum in Scottsdale. Albert Rios, which is our state poet laureate, and Adrian Fontes spoke about the importance of civil discourse. That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Adams?
Nothing to report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Vice Mayor?
Just want to bring up, we had a beam signing today for the last beam that'll go up on the Gateway Library. That beam will be at the library site Saturday from 9 to noon if the community wants to come by and sign that. Also, just as a reminder, Valentine's Day is coming up. We're getting a lot of reminders here. So for all my brothers, if you forgot, that's tomorrow.
Duly noted. Thank you. I was able to attend the Mesa Grandview groundbreaking with Councilmember Adams and Councilmember Spilsbury. That's an industrial there on Virginia, just west of Greenfield there. And also a Together in Service quarterly meeting at the studios. Ironically, I was made an honorary Hohokam at the Hohokam meeting here this past week, so I get to wear another bolo tie.
You get to park cars?
I do, and do the 50-50, apparently. Yeah. Participated, some friends asked me at the Fraser Fields neighborhood meeting that I spoke with them, with Chief Cutler and I and Commander Sterling, who were able to visit there and get to feel that neighborhood, great neighborhood. Also attended the funeral of Battalion Chief Stephen Waters this past Saturday. He died recently, so. With that, all of us are really busy. Ms. Spilsbury.
One more thing, I just remembered our Mesa Arts Center Contemporary Arts Museum is doing their spring opening exhibit tomorrow night from 7 to 10. If you need somewhere to take your Valentine, that's always a fun one, so there you go.
Very good.
Good last minute tips.
Well, Mr. Brady, you want to share future meetings with us?
Sorry, I just got to find the right mic here. We will see you next Thursday for our next study session. And then the next, was it the 23rd council meeting following that? So that is our schedule. We'll meet again next Thursday, the 20th. And the 24th, sorry, is our council meeting.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Well, just when you think you're done, you're not. So item 5 is to convene an executive session regarding the possible acquisition and negotiation of parcel of land. Is there a motion to do that? Mr. Summers, Ms. Goforth? First and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. It's unanimous. Okay, we'll go to the executive conference room, and thank you, everybody, for all you're doing.